Welcome to the Yankee and Canuck podcast, Star Wars special.
And today we're going to be talking about the Phantom Menace 1999 film. This came out how many years after Jedi? Yeah, Jedi came out in 83, right?
83, 99.
So that's about 16 years, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, so about 16 years since Return of the Jedi. So highly anticipated film. You know, everyone and their mother and their dog and everyone else wanted to see this film. Everyone lined up to watch this. This was an event film.
That's true.
Yeah, so there were signs of trouble in paradise. You know, in the previous episode, we talked about the special editions, and it's just like, when they were theatrically released, there were problems. People did not like the new changes. And like I said in the last episode, I didn't like what was being shown, and I was very concerned about what was to come in the form of the Phantom Menace. And sure enough, as the trailers were slowly dropping, there were certain things being shown that people would be like, what's going on here? What's happening? So the longtime fans were already becoming really skittish on what was about to happen. But then the film dropped, and I think it was, at that point, the highest grossing Star Wars film ever. And that record, I think, will only be broken by Force Awakens sometime afterwards, right?
Yeah.
So,
many years later.
About maybe 15 years also. Maybe as long as Return of the Jedi, but...
Correct.
Yeah, but, So what was your experience watching The Phantom Menace for the first time?
First time watching it, wow, okay. I saw it in theater twice, I remember. And probably watched it one more time after that on DVD. And so I've seen it 3 times, up to watching it the other day for this preparation for this. So I want to say I've seen it about 4 times. And I've seen Duel of the Fates, that scene, once or twice on the internet, probably.
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, look, I was always critical of this movie, but consistent. I think we both were.
Yeah.
And there are things that I liked about this film then and now, and there's a lot of things I didn't like. And for me, that's the prequel trilogy. I mean, and it sums it up, And I got to say, I actually kind of dislike the movie more watching it recently the other day.
Yeah.
After so many years and having seen it several times, I kind of dislike it even more, which I didn't expect that to be the case. But the things I like about the film, I still enjoy, and I've said it before, I stand by it. At least, though, this is still Star Wars. Still feels like Star Wars. Is it very good? No. Is it flawed? Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely.
It is watchable. It is still watchable. It's just not good, and I would watch this over the new sequel trilogy any day. Or the prequels in general, I'd watch over the sequels any day.
We're getting a little ahead of ourselves. We will talk about the sequels at some point, but...
True, yeah. I just wanted to get that out, though. So
I want to get off my chest.
People know we stand with you, everyone.
I have a feeling that that's going to be my sentiment as well. That's going to be the conclusion I'm going to come to. But I haven't seen the prequels since about 5 years ago, as of this recording anyway. And the only other time seeing them was in theaters. I figured seeing in theaters was good enough, right? After coming out of the theater, because I remember going in, I'm like, because the first thing that stood out to me was just the visual style. I did not like the way it looked going into this movie. Like seeing the promotionals, like that Taco Bell, like Pizza Hut, KFC cross promotional thing, and seeing the graphics, I was like, ew. It looked too cartoony, It was too heavy on CGI. At that point, CGI was becoming more and more of a thing. But this was, I think, one of the first, if not the first, mostly CGI film. I know for sure the Jar Jar Binks character, which we're going to get into later, is the first fully fledged CGI character in film. As opposed to being a side attraction and whatnot. So, so going into it, I'm like, I don't like this pristine look, because to me, Star Wars is the used future. That is such a cool aesthetic. I love that used future aesthetic. But I understood, it is also a different time period. It's a different series of movies. This is supposed to be separate from the original trilogy. So it's got its own unique, distinct style. So I'm like, all right, I have to go into it with that in mind. But as soon as the movie started, the opening crawl was like, huh? Taxation of trade routes? And at some point I stopped reading the crawl because I'm like, this is so uninteresting. I don't know what I'm reading really. And that was a big problem right off the bat. And then when it opened with Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon, you know, getting into that the alien ship and whatever, I was like, bro, I'm so bored. This is so boring. What's going on here? Like, where are the Jedi here? What's happening? Is there someone needs to be rescued? What are they going to talk about? Political stuff? What's happening? And you know, and stuff was happening within that whole sequence. Like, oh, the ship blew up and whatnot, and the robots come in. They fight the robots, but I'm like, what's happening? I still didn't understand what was going on. Like the plot at that point was just like not very clear to me as a 13-year-old kid. Seeing it as an adult,
fair, yeah.
But seeing it again as an adult, I'm like, I can understand what's happening, obviously, but it still sucks. It's still really boring. It's still a really crappy way to, because look at the way episode 4 opens up. It's a ship battle.
Yeah.
You know?
Yep.
It's like,
or Hoth and Empire.
Yeah. Like the probes are coming in, they're landing on the snow, and then Luke on the Tauntauns and stuff, and Han on the Tauntauns, like a Return of the Jedi, you know. I mean, it opens with just the Darth Vader, you know, coming in, and he's just like, "Hey, what's up? Oh, by the way, the Emperor's coming, so you know, check your balls." And it's just like that doesn't open quite as exciting, but then the thing afterwards is a Jabba Palace thing, and that's awesome. This one is just like,
exactly.
Yeah, but this one's like, what? Why'd you open it like this?
It's a weak opening for sure. And like you said, I totally agree. Back in the day watching it, I mean, we were teenagers when this movie came out, and they kind of gloss over a lot of the plot, and I can see why, because if they went into more details about the Trade Federation and more details in the beginning, you're already going to lose the audience. Even the older people will be like, "What's going on here? Why?" You know, and so, and it's funny because we were, you know, teenagers when this came out, so this was kind of made for youngsters, right? I mean, it's Star Wars, and a lot of us were like, "What the hell is this?" And there are a lot of people who like these films, and that's great, enjoy it, you know. But it's just not for us, you know. And
yeah, I think a lot of those people that like Phantom Menace or the prequels in general were actually little kids when this first came out, like little kids, younger than us, like 6-7-year-olds. Or they were just like Star Wars fans that are just like, I'll like anything Star Wars, you know. And if you're one of those people, you know, more power to you. You know, you like whatever you want to like. But
and now there's people who are just getting into Star Wars and they like the prequels a lot, and then of course because of the sequels, the mess of that, people are into the prequels a lot more, which I'll go into a little bit more later about that whole. I have an idea and a little theory on it.
But when it comes to the
effects of the impact and groupthink and whatnot. So.
Yeah, but circling back to the prequels, it's just like, but when it comes to Phantom Menace, yeah, I mean, like, it seems to be like the biggest fans are the children and people that like anything Star Wars. So
yeah, I think a lot of people, like our friends and stuff, I think, like we said, there's some elements that we thought were good, and there's a whole lot of stuff that are problematic, and it's a flawed film, and that's that, you know. So I think most people take what was good in it and then look at all these problems in it and discuss it. Of course, there was a lot of people that were just pure haters and all that, and so the wave of hatred of the film too, which honestly some of it is justified because of all the flaws, but some of it was just blown out of proportion. And it got pretty bad too.
It really depends on the criticism and how people handle the criticism, because there's a film called The People versus George Lucas, and there's some people on there that just overreacted, I feel. Like, listen, I came out of this film not really liking it that much. I was like, I don't care for it. But there were people that just were seething with hatred, steam coming out of their ears, you know, and just like, and to the point where they were harassing the actors, allegedly, or they were saying terrible things that, like Jake Lloyd, he was just a little kid. He was like 10 years old or something. And it's just like, bro, what are you doing? You're a grown-ass adult. Yeah. Like, what's wrong with you?
And this is before social media too. So like, they were just the actor. I mean, you never blame the actors, and him, the Jar Jar Binks actor, Ahmed Best, same thing. I didn't realize at the time that he was getting, you know, attacked so much and viciously. And so, I mean, that's just terrible. I mean,
and that's, I don't condone any of that stuff either. It's just horrible.
I don't know anybody who did that, but apparently it happened. It was probably older people who were doing that, I would imagine.
Some really socially inept weirdo losers that just like, oh my god, I wanted to be just like my original movies. I'm like, listen, bro, I love the original films too, and I don't like the changes that happen and the stuff that happened afterwards. But come on, man, these are people that are hired to do a job. That's all they're doing. And I think Mark Hamill said in an interview too, like in regards to that, it's just like, listen, like when he was talking about Jake Lloyd specifically, he's like, listen, he did exactly what George wanted him to do. You know,
correct. Exactly.
That's at the end of the day, that's what it is. He was hired to do a job. He did the job.
Yeah.
You know.
Yep. So, and the same applies to all of them, really. I mean, that's what George Lucas wanted, and that's what we got. And then it's fair for us to criticize it, but some of these people just went overboard, and it's really distasteful. So
absolutely. Well, I mean, like at some point, it just makes me feel like, well, you know, I'm kind of glad the original trilogy is ruined in their eyes because, you know, their pain is my my pleasure, I guess, because that's what happens when you act like so horrible. It's just like, I don't know, people that are just horrible people over a movie. Come on, give me a break.
Exactly. Yeah.
But
ridiculous.
Because I could separate all the haze from the original trilogy. You know,
correct.
I could do that. I don't know why people have a hard time doing that, but I could do it no problem. But
yeah.
But anyway, I mean,
at the end of the day, I mean, this film was still important. I mean, it still benefited the franchise. I mean, all three of the prequels, and it did change Star Wars, right? And I have to give credit where credit's due. We call out the flaws as always, but it did expand. It added much to even Legends. It led to a lot of other good storytelling to be told and written about, and improvements in technology were there too. I mean, it helped us get other things that were good, whether it was, you know, games and novels and Clone Wars animated series, and some of these aren't for everybody as well. So.
Yeah, it revitalized the franchise really, there was a state of stagnation because there were no new movies for a long time. There were really no shows or any of that nature. Like some media here and there, but you have to be an ultra fan in order to pick up the comic books or the video games. Like people's entry points are the movies. So Phantom Menace, did usher in a new era and usher in a whole different slew of, you know, TV shows, as you mentioned. So it's just like, you know, I mean, like it was the start of that for sure. But getting into the film, so this is the inaugural film of the new, you know, era of Star Wars. So, I mean, technically this would be our Star Wars, but I disown it. So, I mean,
right.
But yeah, I mean, going back into the whole thing, I mean, there were just certain things that just like, even in that opening scene with Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan, I was like, okay, there's poison gas that enters the room, right? And I'm assuming that's supposed to kill them or something, or knock them out, right? But that doesn't work. They just hold their breaths. I guess they have super Jedi breath or something. Is that right?
Well, to be fair, they're only in the room for a short period of time. So, I mean, a lot of people can hold their breath for what, a minute and a half. Some people. Yeah. I think some people were trained even 2-3 minutes. I think. Well,
that means that they were super incompetent then, because they could have just left them in that room for 10 minutes and then opened the doors. But then they opened the doors in 30 seconds or something. 2 minutes.
It may have been longer than that, but they're Jedi, so they could, you know, breath control. I would imagine they could probably hold their breath for 5 to 10 minutes. I would imagine.
Possibly.
So there's a line there that one of them says, "Oh, they must be dead by now." And to be fair, a lot of people don't know the full capabilities of the Jedi. Like they know the lightsaber, they know a little bit about the Force, the mind tricks maybe, but they don't know all the details.
At some point, it becomes problematic though, because I'm like, okay, why can't the Jedi use the Force to go through the walls? I'm like, well, you could say that, I guess. It'd be ridiculous, but that's why I mean,
they do that with the lightsaber.
No, that's not what I'm talking about. But yeah, a little bit later, they do that, which is a cool scene. They're getting through, you know, those aliens and whatever.
Yeah, and drop the blast door, and he's like, "Okay, I'll just have to shift this lightsaber a little bit different."
I got a zip and whoop, you know. So and then they do the Jedi Force run and whatever. So, yeah. But like, you know, when I saw within that opening scene, at least I was just like, okay. The droids are cool. The battle droids are pretty cool. That's a constant thing with me. That's one of the things I like about the film. Like the actual droids. I was like, okay, these don't look Star Warsy to me, but at the same time they are Star Warsy. I was still not used to it. You know what I mean? Like this is the new era of Star Wars, so I was just like, oh, okay, well, this is pretty cool. And
the battle droids with the shields that roll.
Those as well. Dope. Yeah, those are dope too.
Regular droids are cool. It works for the story, but obviously I don't like the dialogue that they have.
Roger.
And all the cheesy lines that they
no.
They give them too much life and personality, and it's like
they just become, and this is the biggest complaint about the film. It's too cartoony when it doesn't need to be cartoony, and the droids are an extension of that because of the fact they say little cutesy things like "Wee! Oh no," you know, and stuff like that, and it gets to the next scene. I forget what happens afterwards. That's when we're introduced to Amidala, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we get into that and
Naboo,
yeah, because all of a sudden a little bit later, like they're on Naboo, and then the Jedi are just running in the Forest. And I remember and just yesterday when I was rewatching the film, I had to rewind, and I'm like, hold on, how did they get there? I know they said like, oh, they probably were smuggled on the ships, and they're probably on the planet, so look for them. But I'm like, that just sounded like a throwaway line, because I'm like, there was no real bridge as to how they got on. You just have to assume they're sneaky and they're really good at like not being detected by these highly technically advanced robots with their scanners and stuff. Yeah. I don't know. It was way too much for me. That whole sequence with the Jedi right there, it was way too much for me to believe. Okay, they can hold their breath like forever. They can hide indefinitely from all this advanced like weaponry and technology and stuff like that. And they're invincible pretty much. I think that was my main problem with that when watching in the first. I'm like, they just seemed way too OP.
It make them landing on Naboo, even though they don't really explain it. I come to think of it, I don't remember how they do it. Do they take like an escape pod?
That's what I'm saying.
Do they actually show anything?
That's what I think. That's what I'm saying. They don't.
Yeah, so you're right. But I understand that that's probably what it is, because where they are on the ship is there because it's a blockade of Naboo, right? The Trade Federation and Viceroy. Mm-hmm. So they're definitely already near Naboo, right by the planet, right in space.
Well, that's because that ship lands, but you have to assume that they snuck in while they were in space, and then it came down, and then they got out, and all of a sudden they're running. You cut out all that stuff. There's like no lead-in of. If there was a lead-in of them sneaking into a ship, and there's a clever way of them doing it, then I wouldn't have questioned them. I'm like, okay, well that's where they were, and by the time they're on Naboo, you don't have to necessarily see them come out. You just know that at some point they got out. Though a scene like that would have helped. True. So I mean,
that's literally 20-30 second scene. You could have done it.
Yeah, it's like editing easily. 101, but that was like a massive oversight on Lucas's part, I feel, among many in this film. But we get into like everyone's favorite part after that, where Qui-Gon finds Jar Jar. Like when it comes to
pre-Darth Jar Jar,
pre-Darth Jar Jar, pre-Robot Chicken Jar Jar, pre-everything wonderful about this character. Okay, so this is a big character, I feel, for many reasons. So what was your first thought when you saw this guy in action?
I'll be honest with you, I never was a fan of Jar Jar. Didn't like him then, don't like him now. I think the first time, if I trying to go back to remember, I'm an old man now, but I think immediately I was like, what the hell is this? You know, and then more and more you see the time on Naboo and with the Gungans, and the more and more I disliked him. And I know that's the case. And that is the reality for a lot of people. Just didn't like the character. I know, like, once again, we know the actor got a lot of backlash and stuff, and that's all awful. But I'm sorry, Jar Jar's stupid. He's annoying. He has way too much screen time. In fact, I think he has 1 minute less screen time than Obi-Wan. They both have like 25 minutes. Yeah, it's about 25 minutes. And he has 5 minutes just less than Anakin, and I think Qui-Gon has the most screen time.
1 minute of Jar Jar sounds like pure torture.
I mean, it's insane how much, and anyways.
Yeah, I mean,
basically that some people like Jar Jar. That's great. 5-year-olds thought he was dope as hell. I'm sure.
I'm sure.
And now there's like I was saying, a new wave of people defending the prequels and all its flaws, including Jar Jar. There's a lot of people now who are like, Jar Jar's not that bad. He's actually pretty cool. He's funny. I'm like, no, I don't think so, man. Right. But from the dialogue to the acting to the characters like Jar Jar.
Yeah, when it comes to Jar Jar for me, I mean, when I first saw him, like, I was okay with him. I think I felt like he was just way too cartoony. It was just like there were moments where like everyone's like on the same wavelength on the acting spectrum. Where like, hello, Anakin, once you pass the salt, okay, Qui-Gon, and then all of a sudden Jar Jar's like, whoopee, skippy, ha ha ha, and he's just like doing all kind of antics with his tongue and all this stuff, and I'm like, bro, no, what? It just was a complete imbalance. Every time he was in the scene, like I understood he needed to be the comic relief. I understood that, kind of like C-3PO was and R2 was and stuff like that. But he was just way too much. He was like a live-action Looney Tunes character brought to life, and it was just like you just need to dial it down. I felt like if they were to dial it down, still a lot of people wouldn't have liked him anyway. But I would have been like, he's fine, whatever.
You could tolerate him more then. I mean, but like I said, he's in it 25 minutes, about the same as Obi-Wan. He's a huge part of the film, and when a lot of people don't like one element and you're having to look at it the whole, damn movie, then that's a problem.
It's a massive problem. I mean, it is a technical achievement in the fact that he is the first full CGI character, but
yeah,
what is it?
It was gonna be Jabba the Hutt, right?
I mean, technically speaking, it was him for sure.
It was Jabba,
yeah, for the special editions. But in terms of a full-fledged brand new movie and stuff like that, correct, he is considered like the first full, a CGI character. Yeah. I mean, like, and what's that worth at the end of the day? What is that truly worth?
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, but my personal opinion is just like, especially rewatching it again, I'm like, yeah, he can be annoying, but there are times where he's tolerable for me. I mean, he does serve a function in the story. It's not like he doesn't. It's just really more down to the way he was acting, the way he was written. It's just like, it was Lucas going way too overboard. Even people that were working with him at the time were like, do you really want to put this thing in the movie? And then, of course, George Lucas, being George Lucas, was just like, no, listen, you got to put him in there because kids are going to love him. And that's going to cause more sales and toys. And it's just like, all right, you're the boss. Right. You're the boss, man. You do whatever you want. I'm just saying, you're making a big mistake.
Yeah. There's some scenes in there that, you can, I guess there's some scenes you can tolerate him. And there are parts of the film, he's important in the film because he does continue the narration at some point to get to other plot points, so he does drive that when they go to Gungan City and all that. So there's an importance to him. It's just too much of him, and then just the dialogue and the antics, and it's also and I don't think I found a single line of his funny. That's just me.
I don't think it's just you. I don't think I laughed at that character. I don't think it's just you.
Yeah, not a single time. And even when I watched it back in the day, and maybe because when it came out, I was already watching, certain comedy and stand up and stuff. And when I was a teenager, and so like something like this, I wouldn't be fooled by. So,
yeah, I mean,
so maybe and it's
the only equivalent to that is maybe Jim Carrey, but Jim Carrey's actually funny.
right.
He's not obnoxious. He's just like, he doesn't make weird noises like all the time. Maybe once in a while, depending on the role that he plays. But but Jar Jar was just like dialing up to 1,000. I was just like, no.
Yeah. But with Jim Carrey also, you could see it's kind of, some of it's an extension of the sketch comedy and
yeah, you go into that with that expectation, like that's what you're seeing.
Yeah,
you're going expecting that, whereas in Star Wars, you're expecting not that. So that's another thing going against it.
Yeah,
but it is what it is. Jar Jar. I mean, if anything, the backlash with Jar Jar ended up causing him to be dramatically scaled down in the next two films. So,
I mean, he's in the second one for a couple minutes in the beginning, and third movie, he's barely even in it.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, hey, at least George Lucas was able to look at the criticism and be like, all right, fine, you don't like Jar Jar, I'll take him out. I'll kill him. I'll take him back to the shed and I'll shoot him.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Jar Jar. I love you, but everyone else doesn't, so say love me.
Yeah. And I'm glad that the actor, Ahmed Best, he got to return to Star Wars more than once, but in live action, he returned as a Jedi in one of the shows. I don't remember which one. One of the ones that have Order 66 at the Jedi Temple. Yes. And it's been done many times, and I don't remember which one's which anymore.
It may have been Kenobi. It may have been Mandalorian related, because I think he was delivering Baby Yoda, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, you're right.
Grogu.
It is Mandalorian then. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, so many of these shows have the Jedi Temple Order 66.
Yeah, I just don't know if it was
which. But...
Yeah, I just don't know if it was actually Mandalorian, but that's a whole different discussion. Given
how so anyways, it's cool that they brought him back for that, and he got to stay in the Star Wars franchise, and in a different capacity too, one that people can appreciate it more.
Yeah, exactly.
As a Jedi. And,
I mean, because by this point, people are more mature, especially younger fans that have grown up. People understand he's an actor, in particular, and it's cool that they see him in different media. I'm like, okay. And when we get to Hayden Christensen, that's an extension of that as well in the next two films. But for this one, I mean, there's nothing much more I want to say about Jar Jar.
I think we should. Yeah,
we should leave that. Let me get to my next point.
He was in the movie for 25 minutes. He should
Yeah.
We don't need to talk about it for 25 minutes.
We're done. We're done with that. But also, Jar Jar aside, the other thing that really bothered me watching this film was seeing R2-D2 and C-3PO in it, especially in the way that C-3PO in particular was introduced. You know, because, like, listen, I love R2. I love 3PO. They're my two favorite characters in the entire series, like, bar none. R2's 1, C-3PO is 2. That's the ranking order. And you have to have them as a pair to make it work. But to see them in this movie didn't make any sense to me even back then. You know, I was like, okay, R2 being there, maybe there's a conceivable reason why he's just an astromech. He's doing, like, repair work, I guess. But why wouldn't you have, like, a brand new character? That just seemed too coincidental that R2 was there. You know what I mean? You're fixing up that Naboo starship as they were escaping and whatever. So I was just like, it's cool to see him again, but I was like, okay, whatever. I mean, we'll let that slide, I guess. But then when it came to when they got on Tatooine, and then we got introduced to Anakin, and Anakin was like, I don't know about this. But then he's like, check it out, Padme. And then as soon as he pulled that cloth, I was like, what?
Yeah.
I was like, no. And then it's just like, no, that is not C-3PO. But as soon as he turns on, he started talking. I heard Anthony Daniels' voice. I was like, no.
Yeah.
Oh, Darth Vader built C-3. No. I was so disappointed. I was like, that movie, at that point, the movie was ruined for me. I was like, I don't care what they show after that. This movie completely destroyed everything I previously knew, because the original films were about all these strangers coming together to fight against a common foe. To know now that everyone was there from the beginning? No.
Yeah, problematic.
Oh, yeah. It was horrible.
I mean, they're barely... Well, R2's in the movie for about 10 minutes. That's actually about the screen time he's in it. C-3PO's in the movie literally 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Total screen time, 2 minutes. So...
That was a critical 2 minutes, though.
It is, yeah. And it's unfortunate. It definitely is. I will say one thing about the 2 minutes that C-3PO is in the film. One of the funny lines in the film, it's from Anakin. I found it funny this time. I'm sure I did back in the day, too. Was what he tells, it's showing from C-3PO's view, right? And he's seeing Anakin pack up and get ready to leave. And he's like, I'll make sure Mom doesn't sell you or anything.
Yeah, that was actually pretty funny. I mean, anything with C-3PO is usually funny.
Yeah, and he's like, what? Sell me? Oh, bye.
Oh, bye. Yeah. Yeah, no.
That's good, man. That's classic C-3PO.
Well, yeah, I mean, because we're already accustomed to C-3PO, and plus his comedy is like not over the top like Jar Jar. It's just very like, it's almost dry in a way. It's just a dry delivery, but it works because it's just like, oh, this poor little droid's getting pushed around, you know, kind of a way. Like, oh, shucks, C-3PO, one day you'll have yours, you know, kind of a thing. So it's just like, so that does work, but like, oh my God, it's just like, why couldn't they just be completely new robots, different characters? If you want to use the same sort of robots, why couldn't they just be like different? You know what I mean? Well,
they had to bring them back in the film so you could sell more of the toys.
Yeah.
Bring back those toys and sell them again.
That's the bottom line. And I understand that logic, but like shoehorning them in the film, I'm just like, I don't know, man. It just ruined the story, I feel. It's just like, but at the same time, you could probably rationalize, at least with R2, that, you know, he was already in the hands of the rebels by the time of the original trilogy. So it's conceivable that he was part of the Republic, and he may have been mingling within the Republic as a repair droid. So that one's not too far-fetched.
It's not,
That one, even though I don't like it, it's like you could still kind of make that work. 3PO, no. No excuse. I mean, like I said, you know, it's just like one of those things where you seeing a car wreck in slow motion and you're just like, oh no. And then it's about to burst into flames too. But another thing too, the droids aside, is Anakin Skywalker himself. So going into this, I knew he was going to be a little kid. And already I was like, why is he a little kid? Like, I didn't understand that. Like, why go with that? And I understand Lucas's logic with that. One, he was going to appease to a new generation. So he wanted kids growing up to, you know, be like, oh, look, this little boy is going to become one of the greatest, you know, Sith Lords in the universe, you know, and that's cool. You know what I mean? And also you want to see, you know, Anakin Skywalker from a more sympathetic point of view. And in his mind, it's like, well, if you see him as a little kid, like a little like starry-eyed little kid, and you slowly see him degrade into what would become Vader, that is much more of a tragedy. So, and I'm like,
it is,
it is, but I feel like you could still get that if he was like a young teenage boy or a young adult. I don't think you necessarily have to go that far. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you can accomplish it in three films, even if they made that change, because that's what these three films essentially are for, right?
Yeah,
about the fall of Anakin and the rise of Darth Vader. So
yeah,
and it's sad, it's really sad to think about too. Like this kid, all the potential he was going to have, becoming a Jedi, getting off of Tatooine, and
yeah,
crazy to think that he becomes Darth Vader, man.
yeah. I mean, which is in a way,
Crazy.
it is in a way a good idea, and I can understand why he went with it. But of course, there were just way too many problems with that, because then there's the age gap between him and Padme, and the romance that would ensue later. It's just like, I don't know about that. This is a little weird. But also, like, I will say though, having rewatched the film, I do really like that scene where he's about to leave with Qui-Gon, having won the pod races, and then he just hugs his mother, and he's just like, "I am going to see you again," and she's just like, "What does your heart tell you?" And she's like, "I guess maybe," and stuff. That's actually a really good scene. I didn't think I appreciated it before because I was too distracted with C-3PO, but seeing it again as an adult, now that's out of my mind, I'm like, that is a really good scene. That's very touching, you know, and I can see a glimmer of what Lucas was intending ultimately with that.
Yeah, I definitely agree. That scene, in fact, I was thinking about it when watching that. I was like, that part of the scene is really good. She had some lines before Shmi, and I thought they were kind of, I mean, obviously a lot of dialogue issues with the film. And
oh man, that's a whole episode in and of itself.
And she has some lines that are like, this just sounds so unnatural and ridiculous.
Yeah.
But that scene you just mentioned, that was very nice scene. And well executed.
Yeah, it really was. I mean,
you feel the emotion in it, and it's like, okay, then the line is good too, written enough that it, like, because I forgot it'll probably come back to me, but some scenes before that, whether it was at the dinner table or even before that, it just sounded ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. I mean, like, the dialogue, all in all, is just really clumsy and awkward, but that's always been the case. But right, I feel like back then, when it came to the OT, I think the actors were just like, listen, George, I mean, you wrote this crap, but we're going to kind of do it our way, and you're going to have to put up with it. And George is like, all right, fine, do whatever you want. But now that he's big boss man, he's billionaire George Lucas, you know, he is George Lucas, household name, George Lucas. He's just like, this is what we're going to do, and that's that. And I feel like with that sort of control and that sort of presence, I felt like the actors felt maybe, I don't want to say terrified, because that just sounds really bad, but they just felt kind of like, oh, well, he is George Lucas, you know, well, let's just do what he says, you know. And I felt like there wasn't as much pushback as a result, and there wasn't as many notes, I feel, when it comes to the performances. That's my opinion. I don't know if that was the actual case, but that's what it feels like watching this film in particular.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, just, I don't know. So many of the lines are bland. I think even the Jedi at times, you know, obviously they're going to be stoic sometimes and philosophical, but I don't know, just a lot of them. And then obviously with Padme and Annie and Jar Jar and questionable dialogue. And I think I remember now what the Shmi line was. I think it was right after the pod race. And she's like, "It's so wonderful, Annie. You have brought hope." She sounds like that too. I'm like, yo, what is that?
Horrible.
What happened there?
Horrible cringe. That's what. Yeah, but since we're kind of dancing around, I thought the pod race scene is really cool. I think that's probably the best thing in the entire movie, I feel.
Yeah, I would say so. That and Duel of the Fates.
Of the Fates, yeah. But
they're different. They're different, but yeah.
Yeah, they're both great in their own way, for sure.
Interestingly enough, I do remember people criticizing the pod racing sequence. I always thought it was pretty cool.
Yeah,
maybe the Tatooine, because, you know, Tatooine and pod racing components of the film maybe linger a little on the long side, which I think that's a valid argument, because I could see it kind of detracting from the story a little bit. But I think if you look at the total minutes, I don't think it's terribly long, but I think it's because you have the build up to the race itself and then post race, and makes it seem a lot longer. And so, but all in all, the pod race scene I thought was pretty cool.
Well, I going to that point, I don't know if I necessarily agree, because while the whole point of the story is that there's a trade dispute, there's corruption happening, and now as a result there's a territorial war that happens towards the end of the film. But yeah. I know that's the story, but going into this, the story is how are we going to meet Darth Vader? So by the time we saw Darth Vader as Anakin, we were like, okay, here's the story. The story's now beginning, for me anyway. And having watched this film again, I'm like, yeah, that main story about taxation routes, you can f*** off with that. So anyway, Anakin, okay, so how does he become Darth Vader? Oh, okay, so this is the first step. You know, that's to me the real point in which the film starts. So even if it does linger a little bit too long on Tatooine, to me it's just critical because I want to know more about Darth Vader. I want to know, like, okay, why is he so special? Why is he so in tune with the Force? And that's when you get into the whole virgin birth thing, the high, the midichlorian count crap. Yeah, and then culminating to the pod racing. And I think if people like don't like the pod racing, it is very cartoony. It is very much like a video game cutscene. It doesn't feel, I don't think there's much practical stuff happening in that. Maybe the backgrounds here and there, like the stadium scenes, possibly, but all in all, it is a mostly CGI scene. It's like, you know, you're sitting in an arcade cabinet and you're just playing like, woo, and they did make an arcade cabinet and video games based on that, of course.
They did, yep.
Yeah, but compared to Duel of the Fates, that is, as far as I'm aware, that's pretty practical. It's just three dudes fighting, you know. Then maybe there's some CGI backdrops here and there, but it just feels more real compared to the pod racing, you know, which is very, you know, too over the top. But it's still enjoyable on its face, so I feel like it's fine as it is.
Yeah, I think I definitely agree.
Well, I do want to bring up like the confusing nature in which they get Anakin on, you know, with the Jedi.
Yeah, I mean, I was just thinking that. So I was just thinking about the chance that they even got there, right? They landed on Tatooine because they needed a part, right?
Mm-hmm.
If I recall.
Yeah.
Isn't that the reason why they got to Tatooine?
Yeah, because they got attacked. R2 had to like fix their ship, but they still needed a part or whatever because they got blasted. So they landed on Tatooine.
So they happened to land on Tatooine.
Yeah. They did it because they're in pursuit of the Queen. And they said, like, well, the Hutts control Tatooine and they're not looking for her. All the other planets around her vicinity are looking for Padme.
Yes.
That's which makes sense, you know. Looking at that again, I'm like, because I didn't really understand what was going on prior.
In our world, yeah.
But now I'm seeing it. I'm like, okay, I see the logic, but it's all muddled up. Unfortunately, it's not straightforward, so it's hard to understand what's happening. But that's exactly why that happens. But like when
they send her there, the Hutts are gangsters.
Yeah, the gangsters, but they're not looking for her, so that's fine.
Captain Tanaka or something? Captain Banaka? I don't know what his name was.
I don't remember, man. I'm sorry.
Captain Tanaka, I'm pretty sure that's what his name is.
I just remember like the interesting characters like Watto. Oh no, it's Watto!
Yes.
We only have the part here in my junkyard. Don't look anywhere else.
It's the only shop in all of Tatooine.
Yeah, only here, and only money. No Jedi tricks work on me for plot convenience. You know, it's just like, okay, that works, whatever. I mean, I don't have any qualms with that because it didn't work on Jabba, and it had to not work on Jabba. Otherwise, that scene would have ended immediately, right? We wouldn't have the barge scene or nothing. So, of course, you have to write it in that some creatures are like, they're resistant to mind melding or whatever. So it's just like, so I'm like, all right, whatever, that's fine. But that's not my real issue. My real issue is just like, okay, he owns Anakin and Shmi, and Qui-Gon recognizes that Anakin is Force sensitive, and he wants Anakin. But then you get into this whole convoluted rigmarole of like, okay, well, in order to get Anakin, we have to go into a pod race, and we have to wager him. And then it's just like, and on top of that, we need the part. And if we lose the race, you can have our ship, and we're stuck down here. But, and then a little later, it's just like, well, we want to have both slaves. And Watto's like, no, we will roll the dice. And then Qui-Gon cheats so he can make sure he gets Anakin. But I'm like,
Watto was major.
Yeah, but I'm like, I understand that Watto got the slaves from a hut, I think, is what it was. And he didn't want to lose Anakin already, but I was just like, couldn't you get another slave? I mean, what's so special about the slaves you have? Is it hard to get a slave? I'm like, I didn't understand that. I understood why they couldn't escape. They make it clear that there's like a chip or something that will make their brain explode or something. I'm like, all right, whatever. And it's constantly floating around in their body. So, but in terms of like, it's just really messy because I think Lucas wrote himself in a corner where it's just like, okay, well, we're going to have Anakin here, but we got to get him out. But there is the issue with the mom, but we can't have the mom join them because there's already too many characters. But so I'm going to come up with this reason why she's got to stay behind. and let the little boy go on his own. And I'm like, that's the thing too. If he was a teenage boy, him going off on his own would have been like, okay, well, it's his rite of passage. He's already an adult. He's becoming an adult. But you have this 10-year-old kid, and you're like, he's going off on his own with these complete strangers. That's already like weird. You know what I mean? So Lucas really had these core ideas, but he didn't really think through them entirely to know that a lot of these elements didn't make sense. And he came up with this jibber jabber nonsense, like this little bet thing. And it's just like, all right, nailed it. I'm like, no, you didn't. No, you just made it confusing and nonsensical. Because now I hear the meme. The meme for that is just like, why couldn't Padme come back and buy Shmi? She is wealthy, right?
Right. Well, you could make the argument as well that the Jedi could have just freed her as well if they wanted to.
Yeah.
Of course, there's a line that says, we're not here to free slaves. Qui-Gon says that, right? And
I think so, yeah.
He says that in the movie. You know, we're not here to free slaves. But you can. One, you're a Jedi. Two, you're outside the Republic jurisdiction.
Yeah.
Since Tatooine is an outer world. So you kind of can do whatever you want. So you could have freed her too, even though... I mean, you could have. I mean, you cheated on Watto's wager anyways with the dice.
I guess.
I mean, I don't know. You could have just...
Like a line they could have thrown in there is just like, well, you could do that, but you would cause like a complete slave revolt, and that can cause a revolution. And we don't want to do that. We want to go through this the proper channels, like through diplomacy and whatnot. They could have said that, and like we would love to, but there's only so much you can do, and we don't want to cause more mayhem and destruction. But that's not explained, and I feel like you kind of have to assume that would be the case, because I just made it up. But I don't know if Lucas was even thinking about that, you know what I mean?
You could, if you free Shmi, it's not like she can go with him, you know, because he's leaving to become a Jedi. So then you have the whole, because this is normal with Jedi. So then you can't have those attachments. So you actually have to, like, she can't go with him.
Yeah.
You know.
And that becomes a problem when he gets before, like, the council. They're like, you have these attachments, you have a lot of fear as a result, and therefore we can't train you.
Yeah.
So, I mean, just like, yeah, so there's that aspect to it as well. And plus I think they said he was too old. And that confused me when I was a kid. I'm like, he's 10. Like, he's really young. Like, how young do you need to be?
Yeah.
And I understand that they mean very, very young to make sure that you don't have any attachments, but that wasn't properly explained in the film, I feel. So that just confused me.
Yeah, we know that more from legends and other sources of Star Wars.
Because Yoda says that to Luke. And I'm like, well, yeah, he's a grown-ass man. Yeah, he's too fucking old. Of course he's too old. But you go to this little boy like, no, you too old. I'm like, what? But like, he's two, sir. No, too old. No. Like, listen, sir, I know you're like 900 years old, but you need to understand, in human years, that's really young. Care I do not.
It's an 11-month-old who could take like 1 or 2 steps before falling.
Exactly.
Like, too old.
Yeah, just right it is, yes.
How'd you even walk?
But sir, I cannot hold a lightsaber. Don't care.
Man.
To training you must go immediately. So I mean, like, yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where just like,
you, Yoda? What's wrong with you? Yoda?
Yeah, I know, just like you little bastard. How could you? But I feel like that's because I know in the original trilogy, like they explain they throw certain things at you, and you're supposed to kind of go along with it. I understand that it's part of the world building. You're not supposed to ease into the world that much. You're supposed to go into this as an outsider observing. You know what I mean? It's like, this is how the world operates, kind of logic. And Lucas had that logic when he made THX 1138, where the operating logic with that movie was just like, well, you're watching a documentary about another world. Therefore, there's not a whole lot of explanation happening, you know, as within the characters in that movie, because they know how the world operates. You know what I mean? I understand all that. I understand what he was doing, especially way back then. But when it comes to this, it's just like, I'm sorry, you need to explain things a little more, because otherwise I'm lost. I don't know what's happening, you know? And there are certain explanations, though, thank God, like when it came to the midichlorians. But when I was watching that, I was like, what? This is the Force? That's bacteria goo that's inside you?
Well, he wanted to make it less mystical and make it more scientific, and obviously this became controversial. So, one of the most controversial things in the film.
Yeah,
overall in Star Wars. So.
Yeah, because
I'm over it. I'm obviously over it. I don't really care about it that much. I know I didn't really like that at first, but at this point, it's minor enough at this point that I'm like, whatever.
Compared to the other stuff that happened,
There's so much
Yeah,
see what happens.
I know. I think I agree because like the whole
Yeah.
midichlorian thing, I didn't like it because I love the mysticism, the mysteriousness of the Force, the fact that
Yes.
it's like, and then you take it away when you give it a scientific. Not only do you take it away, giving it a scientific explanation, but it goes into question like, okay, you knew this back then, but why isn't that brought up in the OT? Why is that lost? Why doesn't Obi-Wan be like, well, Luke, you have a high midichlorian count, just like your father did? Like, no, he just talks about the Force, you know?
Yeah.
You know, it's just like it's just uneven and it doesn't make any sense. It goes back to the R2 and C3PO thing. It's just like you're just kind of doing things without really thinking about it. You know what I mean? And it really goes back into the baseline script writing phase where Lucas just wrote whatever the fuck he wanted, and then he showed it to people, and he was just, and the people are like, "That's great, George. You did a great job." Well, I'm thinking of rewriting it though. You can do whatever you want, George. You can rewrite it. I think it does need a little bit of work. You know, actually, I changed my mind. You know what? You're right, George. It's fine just the way it is. Go ahead and shoot it. You know, I feel like because of like with the people like Rick McCallum and those people in the circle, they just enabled him to the point where you just have a mess. You know, and that's just one of the many messes in this film.
Unfortunately, a lot of the actors in the original trilogy made him change some of the lines, at least. I know Alec Guinness, one of his complaints was like, look, this is interesting, but this dialogue does not work for me. We need to...
The dialogue's a bit ropey.
Exactly. And then Mark Hamill, same thing, was like, George, nobody talks like this. We need to change this line.
Yeah.
You know, so, I mean, it's...
And Han and
Han was like, why am I here?
Yeah, Harrison Ford.
But,
or Carrie Fisher. I mean, yeah, everyone was questioning that back then.
But I do want to mention, before we get off of Tatooine again, that and it ties in with the visuals, you know, honestly, for the time, some of the CG and visuals are okay, and some of it's, I don't know, man. I felt that now, looking at it, a lot of the blue screen, it takes me out of the scenes. You know, a lot of it looks so lifeless, right?
Yeah.
And it just, that being said, on location, it still works out so great. Tatooine, those parts look good, in my opinion, back in Tunisia, and the architecture, you know, just like Tatooine. This is it. Okay. Naboo, parts of that, like the palace and whatnot, you know, it looks like Greece or Italy. That's probably where they filmed it.
Yeah.
But then the blue screen portions are like, man, it's rough.
It's
so, I mean, also another complaint that I know a lot of people made was, where is everybody in that city? In Naboo, where is everybody? In the palace and stuff, nobody's there. Just, you don't see anybody.
It's very
except for the soldiers.
Sparsely populated, yeah.
Yeah, so
I guess
that was a bit strange.
I guess the logic is they already infiltrated and they evacuated everyone, I think. That's my assumption, though.
Evacuate where? Because it was a blockade, though. So there was really nowhere to go.
Yeah, I don't know.
Evacuated somewhere on the planet? I don't know. Not in the Gungan territory.
I mean, it's a big planet, so I don't know.
Yeah.
It's possible, but that's my assumption. I never really thought about it until you brought it up. So, yeah, that is weird. I mean, you could have had some people in there, I guess, but I know there were those pilots that were held hostage in the hangar. I think this was before they left the Tatooine. But were they on Naboo? That was Naboo, right?
They went to Naboo twice.
Yeah, but
they were on Naboo. They left and then they came back.
Yeah, but the hostage situation. Yeah, they were on Naboo. Yeah, because they were looking for the Jedi, and the Jedi got them, messed them up, and whatever. Then they came back. Yeah, for sure. So yeah, I mean, yeah, especially like the CGI stuff doesn't really work too well. And I mean, I'm able to tolerate it now because I'm so used to it. But back then, I was like, yeah, this is too fake. But one thing that I am thankful for that is CGI was Yoda. When we first saw this film in theaters, there was a really, really bad puppet. Though,
puppet.
I remember seeing that. I was like, is that Yoda? Why does he look so different? And the reason being, of course, is because they didn't use the same puppet. I think, but I remember reading that they got the old puppet out, but that by that point, the puppet was disintegrating because of the materials they were using, so they couldn't use that puppet anymore. So they decided to make a brand new one. But I'm like, if you're going to make a brand new one, why don't you make it with the exact same molds? Or did the molds not exist anymore? Like, I didn't understand that. So as a result, he looked like basically Waddle. I feel the other Yoda equivalent.
Yaddle, yeah.
Yeah, just like it's essentially just Yoda with a wig on. So yeah, but
old Yoda puppet no longer feasible.
No, feasible it is. Yeah, so
make new puppet. We shall.
But when watching this film again, because I've seen the scenes, but I've never seen it in the actual full film. Seeing
Yeah,
CGI
yeah,
Yoda,
same.
yeah, they basically took the CGI puppet, the CGI model from the sequels, or from the Attack of the Clones, and so on and so forth, and they put that one into Phantom Menace. And I'm like, you know what? I'm fine with that. I'm fine with that.
It's fine. It makes sense. Consistent, like, so whatever.
Yeah, it's just like, yeah, it does. It still looks fake, but
I still like the puppets, but
I do too.
not
But
not for the original one for this, but
no,
I think considering what they did in the other two films, Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith, I think, this is the right call to do in this film.
it really was, yeah, because at least it looked like Yoda.
Yeah.
It looked close to the original Yoda puppet. Because I think because of the complaints from this film, when it came to Attack of the Clones, because Yoda was going to have a more prominent role, they were like, all right, we'll just make him all CGI, and we're going to make him as close to the original puppet as possible, so people will not complain at all. And I feel like they did a great job, but we'll talk more about that when we get there.
Yeah. Another thing with this film I definitely want to mention is you get lots and lots of alien races.
Yeah.
And for Star Wars, that's always a plus. It doesn't always have to be the case. I mean, I know, not to go into a tangent, but I know some people complain about Andor doesn't have enough aliens. And for me, it doesn't bother me that way either, because if it works, it works, as long as the writing's good and whatnot. But, Star Wars should have aliens in it sometimes, and there should be an abundance and a variety and a species. And so I think you can make an argument in this film maybe throws in a little bit too much, or maybe not at the right time, misplacement, like on Tatooine, for example. Once again, going back to Tatooine for the last time, I think. But during the pod race, you get 20 seconds of the Tusken Raiders shooting at the race, right? And then you get in the same sequence or so, you see the Jawas for just a few seconds. Yeah, I mean, I'm glad they're there. I mean, they're a big part of Tatooine, but it kind of felt like it was just thrown in there, like last second. Oh, I forgot about the Jawas. Throw them in there for a second. The Tusken Raiders, throw them in there.
Yeah, the same thing with the Tusken Raiders. Yeah, Jabba the Hutt. Well, yeah, well, you're on Tatooine, so that's acceptable, I feel, especially since,
I know, but they could have made him a little bit more, maybe some level of prominence. I think Jabba's was fine because he's just overseeing the pod race, and then he falls asleep. And
I don't like the way he looks, by the way. He was all CGI. I really did not like the way he looked. I know that it was an improvement of the way he looked in the special edition, but I still felt like he looked way tinier than he needed. That puppet looked enormous in Return of the Jedi. And then when you get to his subsequent depictions, he looks like a tiny little thing to me. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know what happened, man. He got his hands on some Ozempic, or I don't know what's going on, man. But that was like, Jabba, what's happened to you, man? What's happening?
He let himself go. And he just kept eating and eating, and ballooned upwards.
There you go.
Yeah. But I do like the whole alien thing too. I mean, it is varied. It is diverse. That is one of the things I said in the last episode we did with Return of the Jedi. It's like, I don't like the fact that we're using the same aliens over and over and over again, like prominently. So I do like the fact that in every movie that Lucas has made, anyway, there's always some new creatures. So, and it feels more lively that way. Sure, maybe it could have been. Maybe it was a little bit too much at times, with the sheer amount of them that he put on screen and things like that. But I'm like, yeah, this is cool though. It feels lively. It feels, so it works out, I feel.
Which is nice. Yeah, I think that's a good thing. So
yeah. So
yeah, I mean, all in all, I mean, there's other positives. I think bringing back, of course, Ian McDermott as Palpatine, that was good.
He was good.
He did such a great job as the Emperor in the OT and Jedi, and
it's just you just know it was him and those holographic messages though. That's the only thing. It's just like, yeah, of course, we know it's you. No attempt to conceal his voice or nothing. He's just puts a little blanket over his head and he's just like, "Hello, I am Darth Sidious," and you hear knocking from outside. Hello, Mr. Chief Palpatine. I'm busy right now. Is there something wrong with your throat? Do you want me to get you a cough drop? No, I'm fine. I'm on a call. And then the other aliens are like, is there something wrong, Darth Sidious? Why are they calling you Chief Palpatine? Ignore that. Yeah, it's a TV. TV's on. Palpatine's on. He's making a speech and stuff. Anyway, it's just dude, I mean... that to me was just they could have done that a lot better. I feel we can make a whole list of things he could have done better, honestly. But
that's true, yeah. So, but overall performance, there you go. I thought Qui-Gon's cool. It's a good character, pretty cool character. I mean, you can't really develop a character that much in this one film, right? So, but I thought it does make it's interesting to think about what if, he didn't die and if he trained Anakin, how would that have turned out? I know people have discussed this but then maybe the prophecy wouldn't have been fulfilled, right? So who knows? I don't think about it much, but it is interesting to ponder.
I would make an argument it probably would have been fulfilled regardless. Because of the fact, like, it's meant to be a prophecy, right? It's prophesized that this event will happen. So you could argue, like, well, that's why Qui-Gon had to die, and therefore Obi-Wan failed him as a teacher, because even in the OT, I mean, like, he said that he took him on as his pupil. That canonically it's already established that was going to happen. So regardless, but putting that aside, if Qui-Gon would have done it, seeing Qui-Gon in this film, he's got dodgy morals. Let's just be honest. He's got a dodgy way of doing business, and I feel like that would have rubbed off on Anakin, and Anakin would have ultimately become a Sith, because the thing that really sets Anakin off really is in the next film with his mother. That's the whole thing that really sets him off at the end of the day. That's the spark. So there is nothing that anyone would have done, honestly. I mean, arguably you could have just released her, but as we just discussed. But regardless, I mean, that there was nothing really that the Jedi would have done to ameliorate that situation. So I feel like that was set in stone.
No matter what happened, Jar Jar was going to be like, that was going to happen no matter what.
Hey, Bobowski, what's happened to you?
I think Qui-Gon's a cool character because also he's not like the other Jedi. He's one who really is more focused on the Force itself than I feel the other Jedi are. A lot of these other Jedi, not just from this film, but we know, they're more tied down with the bureaucracy, with the Republic, and which, not to go into the lore and other films and other stuff, but that was one of the issues Dooku had and whatnot. So, and even in this movie, you have a line where Obi-Wan says something like, well, you know what? Master Yoda told me to do this. And Qui-Gon actually says, well, you know what? Kind of says like, you know what? You should actually do this because this is the way of the Force, which I thought is very interesting because, I mean, while they're both Jedi Masters, then Yoda's the top dog,
the top dog Jedi.
I don't know if he was the Grand Master of the Jedi Council, although Mace Windu at one point was the Grand Master as well, and but then Yoda became again.
I think it's a reasonable assumption to make.
So it was interesting that Qui-Gon was like, yeah, but even Yoda, you got to look at it like this, and so he was kind of a realist when it came to the Force, and which I think makes him a little bit more in line with Count Dooku. Dooku obviously took things way too far and fell. But which is also another thing I noticed in the film, which I noticed it more this time watching it. We already know how much the Jedi and the Republic are all tied together, right? And the whole beginning of the movie is because the Republic are asking the Jedi to go this trade negotiation with the Trade Federation blockade, all this, and deal with the issue. And if things get out of hand, we have the Jedi. Okay. Obviously that's problematic, right? But the issue, and which, like I said, was an issue for Count Dooku, but because there's corruption in the Senate and in the Republic. But I forgot how much the Jedi cater to the senators and stuff so much. And it's kind of lame, to be honest. It kind of makes them look weak, I think. There's a scene in Naboo where they are there. No, in Coruscant, I'm sorry. And they literally bow. The Jedi all bow to Chancellor Valorum. I know he's the Chancellor or whatever, and Palpatine, though. I feel like they bowed to some senators as well. And I'm like, okay, I get it. The Jedi are respectful, but it reminded me of like in Curb Your Enthusiasm. They're talking about a proper bow or a bow. And so it wasn't a bow in this movie. It was a bow, like proper, formal, and I don't know. I mean, no wonder the Sith took over. Look, they obviously could see what was in front of them. Their Jedi were too high, too complacent. So I don't know. I mean, I never really paid that much attention to it. Like how much the Jedi were like. I don't know. Like I looked at it as kind of a weakness. As like catering to these politicians. Like, what are you doing?
In the context of the film, all I saw is that these Jedi are basically police officers, and they're just kind of doing whatever the Republic tells them to do.
Yeah, I mean that's a problem. That's part of their downfall. I mean, that's exactly what it was.
Yeah, because I thought the idea was the Jedi run society because they're space psychics and they have powers and they can overpower people, but it doesn't seem to be the case So, which means that they just seem, like I mentioned, they're just more like police officers or just like army generals and things like that nature. So they're not really they're not really suitable for parliamentarian politics or anything like that. They're just like
Yeah.
They may have some say, but they're just like, that's not really our avenue. Our thing is to make sure there's balance in the force and all that stuff. So I mean, just like all this other stuff dealing with, you know, trade routes and taxation, whatever, you guys can handle that. We don't really care about that so much. We can enforce whatever we want to force as long as it seems reasonable, you know. That seems to be like the basic operating logic, I feel. And I'm like, all right, whatever. It is what it is. Speaking of the Senate scenes, though, man, they are the worst scenes in the entire film, I feel. They're just so boring. Like I was so bored watching that stuff when I was a kid, obviously, but even now when I'm more politically minded and more interested in that stuff, it's just like I'm watching this stuff now. I'm just like, yeah, this is still boring. I don't like this.
Which was a complaint for people because it's a movie for kids, and so a lot of this tariffs and trade and Senate scenes and no confidence votes and bickering and political stuff. It doesn't make sense to a lot of people to watch, and definitely take you out of it as well. So
it really does. Yeah, I mean, not to say that there wasn't politics in the original trilogy. There was, just
it was
to such a small extent, though. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Yeah. This one had a lot more. It's kind of like George wanted to make this kids movie, but then he wanted to throw in all this other stuff in it.
Yeah, he just got bored. Just like, all right, this part's the merchandising opportunities, and this part's the stuff I actually watch on C-SPAN.
Yeah. So I mean, it gets a little but but whatever. It is what it is.
I mean, you can't go back and change it, though. People have tried via fan edits. Like, there's an interesting fan edit that I saw many years ago, where they took the Jar Jar character and they dubbed his dialogue with a completely different alien language, and all his dialogue was in subtitles, so effectively changing all his dialogue. So they changed that character they changed him from a really goofy like kind of character. They cut out all that stuff too, from what I remember, and they made him a character that was really arrogant and just full of himself. Okay. He was just like I remember the scene which Qui-Gon tackles him. And the ship goes, over them and stuff like that, and that's where he saves them. He's indebted and whatever. Yeah, and then in that scene, we know that Jar Jar's like, "Well, you also saved my life according to the gods. I'm indebted to you."
Yeah.
But in the fan edit, it's instead said like, "Oh, you see that? You got in my way. You should thank me. I saved your life." And Qui-Gon's like, "What are you talking about?" Like, I didn't save your life. He's like, "No, I saved your life. You should be indebted to me." They turned the table on him. Like, "Oh, you're one of those characters. I see." And he had that kind of tone throughout the rest of the movie, and it made him a little more bearable. Good, I feel it made him more bearable.
Yeah, that actually kind of could make sense too, because he's an outcast. He's they've thrown him out of Gungan City and all that, so he's a problem. So maybe it's actually because of his demeanor, his arrogance, and maybe he's kind of a crook or something. And so maybe that could have been interesting to go that route.
Yeah, they could have done that, and you still would have had that character. Maybe once in a while, scoundrel. Maybe he gets to and his antics would be like he gets into trouble.
Yeah,
like he trips on something accidentally, not like almost intentionally, as he typically does, and then he gets the others in trouble and stuff. Why would they keep him around? I forget why they keep him around. I think it's because like he knows the Naboo system or something. I forgot.
Well, after they leave the Gungan city, the leader of the Gungan, he gives them passage to get to where they need to, right? But then because of the life debt and whatever, so Qui-Gon's like, well, let me take Jar Jar too.
Oh yeah, because he was going to
be. He can navigate, like you said. But and then also, they just want to get rid of him too. So,
yeah, I think he was just. Now I remember. I think that he was just saving him. Qui-Gon was just saving Jar Jar because he was going to be punished. Is what they said.
Yeah, they were gonna.
He took pity on him or something. I think that's what that was. But but then later on they make him a general.
Yes.
Why?
You are now General Jar Jar. Oh! He's like, oh, Mr. General. No, he actually fades. He actually fades.
What was that?
General. Oh.
Yeah, that's.
Then he collapses.
Oh man, that scene, and plus, there's a lot of pointless stuff happening in that battle scene too, because they did the shield, but then the robots went right through the shield. So I was like, what's the point of the shield? And and then Jar Jar, he's just like he's falling. He's got the robot attached to him. He's like, wah! And then he's like killing the robots and whatever. Which also leads to another thing that doesn't make sense to me, which is just like Anakin in the cockpit. It's like, stay in that cockpit, but then he activates the cockpit, or he activates the ship, and it goes on autopilot, and then he's flying around, and he's like, it's like pod racing. But I'm like, this is a completely different ship, though. I mean, that's a stretch. That's already a stretch. And then he goes inside, right inside the thing, and it blows up the thing. And
it's ridiculous. I mean, it's ridiculous.
I mean, yeah, it's like, I get it, the Force.
And he blowing up that ship, it's just too much. It's so unrealistic.
Very.
It's as if George Lucas just had to have that in there because maybe it's because in A New Hope, Obi-Wan says to Luke, when I first met him, Anakin was such a great pilot. And
it just really makes the whole argument of Anakin should have been older. That makes it more prominent in front and center.
Yeah.
Just like, listen, if he was like 17 years old or 16, let's say, that young, but at the same time not too young, then it's just a matter of like, come on, Qui-Gon, I could do this, and then he's like, no, then I'll do it. And it's just like he goes and he does it, and he's just like, and you can reasonably assume like a teenager at that age has enough experience to know how to navigate this thing. And
just like Luke had experience as a amateur pilot.
Yeah, exactly.
And
exactly. And he's stubborn too. On top of that, you make him more stubborn. He's not as subservient, and that clues into his demeanor later on in the series. Like, he's already exhibiting defiant behavior by blatantly ignoring what Qui-Gon is saying. But in the movie as it's present now, it's like, oh, it's a little accident. Oh, it's a fun little accident. Wee, let's have a fun adventure. Woo, we're going back now. And it's just like, nah. And it just, all right, whatever.
Him shooting the 3 battle droids so Padme and the other soldiers could proceed, I'm okay with that, because he actually misses some of the shots. It's just turning. So all he has to do is shoot, and he misses, he hits, he misses, he hits. Mm-hmm. But then he takes off and then joins the space battle. I mean, hell, the space battles in general, I mean, I thought they were weak as hell.
Yeah.
There's no feel of an actual dogfight. It just feels like shooting and lights, lasers everywhere. Pew, pew. And style over substance. I didn't really like
that's because we're not really feeling the conflict. Because again, what is the main story? There's a territorial dispute or something, right?
Yeah.
Who cares? There's no sense of urgency. Where the gun, there is some inkling of like, oh, the guns are going to lose their territory or whatever. Wildlife is going to be like demolished or whatever. But I'm like, it just doesn't feel like. It doesn't really feel like that's the case. You know what I mean? There's no real sense of urgency of anything that's happening. Again, look at look at A New Hope. What's the sense of urgency there? Oh, they have Death Star plans, and the Death Star blows up the fucking planets, and therefore you got to destroy the Death Star because it's controlled by space Nazis. Whoa, what do you know? That makes sense. I can follow that. Right off the bat. This one, it's just like, what's happening? What's the conflict? Why should I care? Oh, I don't understand it. Okay. Oh, at least we get to see C-3PO and R2 and Anakin and all that stuff. Some lightsaber fights. Yeah, well, that's cool, I guess. I think that's what Lucas was really hoping at the end of the day. But like, I'm going to razzle and dazzle, and then people are going to forget it's really bad. I'm sorry, George. That didn't happen. It was the very opposite of what happened.
Yeah. Even at the end with the end of the film, actually, it does remind me of Return of the Jedi in the sense that he's doing 3 separate sequences. For example, in Jedi, it's Endor, it's Luke with Vader and Emperor, and then you have the space battle. 3 events occurring, right?
Yeah.
And so in this movie, it's same 3. You have Padme and the team, taking back Naboo. You have the space battle with Annie, and then you have Obi-Wan, Qui-Gon, and Darth Maul. So you have that same sequence of 3 things occurring, and that can be cool. The only Padme with Naboo, but that's also including the Gungans, right? So what's happening on
she's
the
trying
space battle?
She's trying to make him sign a new treaty or something like that. So that's her.
So the
whole
Gungan
thing.
battle is so it's all tied together, and I thought that the only thing is, I think while that worked in Empire, and I guess it works here too, it sometimes is problematic because you have. I'll tell you why. Because you have the Maul stuff, which is serious. The music, the score, it's all serious, and then Qui-Gon dies and all that. But remember, it keeps going back to the other scenes, and then you go back to a Jar Jar scene, and then it's tragedy and death. And then there's more Jar Jar. Don't forget Jar Jar. So
it's like, And as
Come on,
cool
man.
as the Duel of Fates is, I don't know why that happened. Why?
Yeah.
Why is Darth Maul fighting the Jedi just because he can? What is the point? I didn't.
No, I mean Sidious at that point. Sidious had ordered him to eliminate them.
Why?
Before that, he wasn't,
But
hadn't, well, because the
there's more
plans were
than
starting to
two
change.
Jedi. That's just like you're just
Yeah,
exposing yourself.
but these ones specifically are with Padme, and they're going to mess up his plans with the Trade Federation and droids.
Yeah,
But of course, all of his plans are kind of
wouldn't that rouse
his
suspicion?
plan.
Like all of a sudden, there are these lightsaber marks on these dead Jedi. Who else could
Well, they
do this?
yeah,
And
yeah. Well, they already knew that Darth Maul from Tatooine, so
yeah, they already said like, oh, the Sith have been extinct for 1,000 years. It makes it more stupid why you would reveal yourself. You know what I mean? And I know
yeah.
that the rule of two was a thing I think was established in this film. Maybe it may have been in other stories earlier, but it was firmly established as canon in this film. But I don't understand the logic behind the rule of two, so the Jedi can have more than one. I know they can only have one Padawan at a time. I get that. But the Sith, is that the same logic, or there can only be literally two Sith at any time?
It's always two because that's the rule of two was created by Darth Bane, and in Star Wars lore, that's about 1,000 years before the Phantom Menace. Like Darth
Yeah.
Bane died probably like 50 years before Yoda was born,
Uh-huh.
and he created the rule of two, and it's stuck the whole time. So that is a rule, and the apprentice has to take over.
Is it just so they can
Kill the
hide their
master.
numbers? Is that the logic behind that? So that way the Jedi won't completely exterminate them?
I think it's not just because of the Jedi. It's also because of the lore in other times. There was great Sith wars as well. So Sith and Jedi battle as well, fights so many times.
Yeah.
The hyperspace wars, all this and that. But the Sith conflict within. So to manage that better, instead of having all these Sith running around, so many agendas, you have the rule of two. It simplifies the Sith agenda to eradicate the Jedi, take over the universe, whatever. And it makes things more feasible, more, reasonable, and you can accommodate your ambition and kind of hope for the best when you're only containing it to two people. But when you got dozens
Right.
of Sith, they're all twisted and they're all wanting to do this. They all want more power and
Yeah, of
greed and
course.
whatnot. So
Yeah, so the keep the power, but I still wonder like how does that work? So is it just a regional thing? Like in this region there's only two Sith, or in this
it's the
planet
whole there's always only two Sith everywhere,
in the whole universe, the whole galaxy?
whole universe. Yeah, in the galaxy.
So how do you recruit more Sith?
Well, there's always force sensitive people throughout the galaxy, right?
Uh-huh.
But to be a Sith, like you have to be trained in the Sith arts, right?
Yeah.
So, of course, in ancient times they had an academy and whatnot, and so you have to be taught a lot of things, just like Plagueis taught Sidious and Tenebris taught
Right, but if there can only,
Plagueis and so forth.
but if there can only be two in any universe, how do you pass down those teachings to another? It just seems to me like a very, very, very small religious sect where you're just like, okay, I'm the only one. I'm only gonna get this other guy in, and hope for the best that we both don't die, and therefore the religion is extinct. You know what I mean? That's kind of
Well, nothing never really is finished because in Star Wars and lore, there's always holocrons, right? There's Jedi holocrons, Sith holocrons. So
yeah.
in the story of everything in Star Wars, there are certain people who've gone to find these holocrons.
Mhm.
There's some in the Jedi Temple. There's some on different planets. Sidious obviously has a collection of them, and so there is a database in that sense of these things. But yeah,
But what if someone is force sensitive and is like more towards the dark side, comes across the holocrons, learns this stuff, but then all of a sudden he's like, well, I better stop because there are already two Sith and I can't really mess up these plans, so I'm going to put these back. Like that seems to be like an honor system.
It doesn't.
Is there an honor system within the Sith? Because like, I don't understand how that works.
You can be a dark force user and doesn't mean you're a Sith, right? Sith is very specific teaching and guideline. Just like there's force sensitive people who don't join the Jedi Council, join the Jedi Order, and they use their force abilities normally and as they would. Or a lot of times they don't, get to use much of it because they're not trained. But
yeah,
probably come in handy.
Yeah, but what if someone stumbles upon the teachings and learns from it, and inadvertently becomes a Sith, even though there are already two Sith?
You could claim to be a Sith, but just because you have some of the Sith teachings, but I think you still need a teacher, right? The holocrons aren't probably enough. for one person to
you
gain enough knowledge.
You need a
in
membership
holocron.
card and a membership jacket, and
Because the holocron's not going to teach you to do all these abilities, and what a holocron's not going to teach you force lightning. Per se.
Right.
You know, you still have to be taught certain things. So the philosophy you can get in certain elements, and so yeah, I mean that's just and usually Sith can also. The way the Sith were operating for so long with the rule of two is they were so well established. That's why they're in the shadows for so long.
Yeah.
And they were controlling things behind the scenes. And that's what shrouded the Jedi, this cloud. And we've seen in lore and other things when there's other Sith, a lot of times the Sith rule of two will try to neutralize that. Just like in the animated stuff, Sidious finds out that Darth Maul is still around, right? So he goes, and not only that, Darth Maul is now with his brother.
Yeah,
who was created in the Clone Wars series.
Mm-hmm.
And so then Sidious is like, oh, you're still here. And who's this? You've taken on an apprentice. Now I'm going to kill both of y'all. Because he already has, at that point, Dooku.
There can only be one, or actually two.
So yeah. So, I mean, you'll be found out eventually.
It still sounds very confusing to me. It's just one of those things where I'm just like, I know why. It's one of those things where I understand why Lucas did that to make the conflict a lot more simple. So people won't be like, okay, these two are dead, but therefore there could be more. But Lucas is just saying like, no, it's just these two guys. And after these two guys are dead, and that's it, you win the story. You win the conflict, you win the war, whatever. The story's ended. So I understand the operating logic behind that, but when it comes to actually implementing it, it's just like it's a little messy still. But I don't know. That's just me, though. Yeah, I understand that there are other Dark Force users. That I fully understand. I understand from what you're explaining. It's just like, well, you can learn some stuff from the Sith. Doesn't necessarily mean you're a Sith. Maybe you can learn their abilities and this and that, but it's not. You're not really a Sith. So it still makes it a little messy, but it is what it is, I guess. But yeah, it ultimately goes circles. We've already touched on it here and there throughout this whole discussion, but it all circles back at the very end. The whole problem with this film, Lucas writing the damn thing. So the thing with it is just like before, especially when it came to Empire, he is on record saying like, I don't like writing. It's something I've never enjoyed. Really, I've always, if I have to do it, I have to do it. But I always like to give the responsibilities to someone else, and I like to oversee their work, and give them notes. So effectively, just acting like a producer. So it's just like that's what he's more comfortable doing. So I'm like, but in this case, for whatever reason, he decided to take on the whole writing mantle for all three of these films, and direct them on top of that. So I'm just like, he had such a hard time making this stuff before. But now, all of a sudden, he feels like empowered to do everything, or just to do at least those two jobs, and producing on top of it. And I'm just like, what gave him the idea that he could do this? Was it just being surrounded by people saying like, "You're great, George. You're the best, George. George Lucas creating Star Wars, all three of them. That's 100% George Lucas," and it probably got to his head. Like, what do you think happened?
I don't know, man. It's like one thing that comes to mind is, I don't think he's a director. He's not an actor's director, right?
No.
So I think it's well established, and I think that's why the best advice you'll get from him, or the only advice, is faster and more intensity.
Exactly.
Faster and more intense. I can't
Just do it better.
George.
Do it better.
Make it more faster and intense. I can't do George Lucas. So.
Faster, more intense. Like I know Harrison Ford said, like it's a very famous clip. It's circling around this interview thing that he did, where he's just like, George Lucas was just like, just do that. And then Harrison's like, it's not about just doing it. Acting is about the process of finding something. You can't just do it and magically hope that it will all work out. But with Lucas, because he says like, listen, I think he likes people, but he's so impatient with, the method of acting, the process of acting. So it's just like, I mean, it's just like, I think we all have that idea of like, we know what we want, but not all of us can express that to people in order to get what we want. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And sometimes within the process of trying to get what we want, you end up getting something else that's better that you never thought of, and you work with that. And George Lucas is so rigid that I feel like he's just very stubborn and wanting to get what he wants, and he's just like, it's good enough.
it's strange because he says these things about it writing. He doesn't like writing, and he acknowledges some of his flaws. But you'd think the reasonable thing, well, in the original trilogy, at least, he was reasonable. He got other people involved. He got other directors. He got
Yeah.
and they did. I mean, those movies are great because of those people too, right? And maybe even mostly.
And he still he still oversaw the process.
He does, yeah, and signs off on this, signs off on that, but
Yeah.
he has everyone else doing everything pretty much, and in many ways, not everything, but
No,
so
yeah.
I mean, he acknowledged that, and for whatever reason, in the prequel, it's like he doesn't want to look at the same way, like, okay, I have these flaws, and which I admit, whether it's dialogue and writing or whatever, what have you, and so I'm gonna kind of be a little bit hands off in some areas, but in this, it's like I'm gonna go ahead and do all this, and
yeah. I think also
it's kind of strange,
I think
because usually most people you usually want to something you lack at, you want someone else to work on that to build the entire product up, So
well, I think on a technological standpoint, I guess that also made him feel empowered, because before he was very restricted on what he was able to do, because having been he's got to use practical effects, and sometimes they don't always work out, and they take a very long time to make. Whereas now with computers,
caused him to cut out other scenes that he wanted in and stuff like that.
And then when he looks at the films, he doesn't look at the films that we do. He looks at it as like, oh, that could have been better. Oh no, I remember I had diarrhea that day. Oh no, this and that, and it's just like he sees it as a completely different thing. So, but dealing with these films, it's just like you could do everything on the computer. That was his operating logic. Oh, great.
Yeah.
And that's eventually what he ended up doing with the other two films, making all the backdrops. If he would have completely replaced the human characters with CGI, he absolutely would have, as long as it looked convincing to him. But it got to that point, and and I, as an artist, I understand like wanting to have as much control as possible to get exactly what you're seeing in your head.
Can't blame him for that, but you also have to be reasonable.
Yeah, you have to be reasonable. I mean, you have to realize that this is a process, especially in the industry he's in, the film industry. That's a collaborative process at the end of the day.
Yeah,
and you have to work with other people. That's just what it is.
Yeah,
and this is just like, I think, like a good example of hubris. It's just like you believe your own hype, you believe other people around you. You kind of do whatever you want. And even towards the end of editing that film, he's documented being like, I think I've gone too far, in some parts. And it's just like, bro.
You think?
You think, bro? No one... but then he's just like, whatever, we'll release it as is. And then he got the backlash. And that's when I feel like he really... I don't know how much of that backlash affected Attack of the Clones. I know it definitely affected Revenge of the Sith. And it definitely influenced him selling it to Disney.
Yeah.
I mean, that was like, to think that you're the king on the high mountain and you can't do no wrong. Everyone loves you, you think. And then to have that all torn down, starting with this film, that's soul crushing. I admit that. But it's also your own doing, I mean, that's just what it is, That's what happens.
Some of it, some of the backlash is maybe not reasonable, and there's some really stupid arguments and stuff, and there's some good ones too, and so, but he has to bear some responsibility. He's the one who bloody made them. So, so I think that's, and then there are some people who are such big fans of George Lucas, he can't do anything wrong,
Oh, that's spectrum, yes.
So, there's literally people who even say the dialogue, the acting is good in the films. Even when the dialogue is bad, it's deliberately like that because the characters are supposed to be like that.
They're supposed to be crappy and
sure.
and annoying.
Sure. Yeah, no, it's part of the story. Yeah, okay, yeah.
Oh, sure.
Sure. Whatever. You say. And sometimes people are just not experienced actors, and it's also what they're given in their hands, the paper, script and stuff. So, I mean,
well, it's not just that, because we're talking about
probably, like, this is part of it.
But we're talking about Jake Lloyd, maybe, because he maybe acted in one thing
before.
or
Hayden Christensen in the second film, and Christensen in the second film.
Well, Christensen acted and stuff, definitely, prior to Star Wars, but
probably, but but
he has, but even with the experienced actors, their performances are bad, Yeah,
I mean, look at like him, Natalie Portman. I mean,
Sam Jackson.
We said the writing, the dialogue, sure. I mean, that's who wrote all that. George Lucas did.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's not like you can't. Yeah. I'm not going to buy it if you say no. It's all right. It's supposed to be like that. Those characters are supposed to be.
They're supposed to be
like that and sound like that. And it's like no, I don't buy it.
Yeah, I don't buy it either.
So
that's why I mean, but we came into this as kids that watched the original trilogy, and we're coming into adulthood barely watching these, and we went into adulthood at the end of these movies.
Yeah.
So I mean, just like we got to the end of our teenage years anyway, but it's just like, so,
I think it was 18 or something when Revenge of the Sith came out, I think.
Yeah, I was like maybe
17, 18?
I was probably 19, something like that. But
yeah,
but it's just like, so we're pretty much like an interesting class of people where we're just like, we experienced the originals when we were kids, we experienced the prequels when we were teenagers, and we experienced the sequels as adults. So like our opinion to Star Wars just really comes from being there from the very beginning, virtually. And as little kids, like, because there are a lot of Gen Xers that love Star Wars, that they started with those original movies, and they hated the prequels with a fiery passion and all this other stuff. And we don't hate the prequels, really. It's just we don't like them. It's just like, yeah.
Exactly it. I mean, we went over the things we liked, and there's so many things we dislike, and I think it's a fair way of looking at it. It's not like, oh, this entire movie is, a pile of garbage, and there's no redeeming quality. Like, no, I mean, there's definitely some cool stuff about it, and the bigger picture is it did lead to a lot of things that were positive, and and we always give George Lucas credit for the whole thing, and whatever we criticize is fine, but also at the same time, with these, he was all hands on. But then, I love the fact that when it came to Legends and stuff, he let those writers and creators do whatever they wanted, as long as you don't mess with the Skywalker saga in this, this period of time, have at it. And so many creators, writers, game developers did some great work, and they couldn't have done it without his okay. So I mean,
so it's just
mad respect to him for that. So
it's just a matter of expanding the universe, and he can't do everything because he's not just a creative, he's also a businessman. He's got a business to operate several,
exactly. And honestly, I mean, he knows that these other writers are going to do a better job than him in some of these avenues to explore.
Or they can at least fill in
the time. They're younger. They may have better ideas. So many things, and I think he acknowledged that. He just didn't want anybody to mess with his little, 100 year period of time, and I totally get that.
Yeah, but there's also like they're filling in the blanks too that he didn't want to fill in. So
true, yeah.
So I mean, just like all those aspects are into play here, but ultimately, as we're going to probably go through all the films, it's just like, I feel like the best way to make Star Wars, a lot of people say practical effects and stuff. I'm like, yeah, that's a component, I guess. I think that's maybe less so these days with the advent of digital technology. You can tell when something's like made out of plastic and stuff compared to back then. But I would say it's just really like the fact of, George Lucas coming up with an idea, maybe writing in a rough draft, maybe an outline at the very least, and having other people take a stab at it, and then he looks over it, and then he kind of redoes it, and then he has other people, take a shot at it in terms of directing and all that stuff, on-set producing, and then he comes back, and then he's just like, no, let's just do this, let's do that, and by the time he gets to the editing, which he is in full control of, that's when he's just like, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, and he has a better sense of how the story can go from there, having had the project in the hands of several people at that point, his trusted creative confidants, because that is what made the originals great. And when it came to the prequels, he was all hands-on for the most part. And that was a bad idea. But when you get to the sequels, it's like he's not there at all, and that's bad too. It's just bad in a completely different way. Now it's just aimless and soulless. Because when you look at Empire, when you look at the Phantom Menace, it is a mess, but it's a coherent mess. You can understand generally what's supposed to happen for the most part, even if there are confusing bits here and there. You understand, like, this is more or less what the story is going to be at the end of the day. And plus, visually speaking, it's very visually consistent as well. You could tell this is a very George Lucas branded style of filmmaking, with the wide shots, with the wipes, with the close-ups, because his way of filming is just showing as much of the scene as possible. That's just the way he wanted to do it. And I guess, and in that way, I think it influenced Empire. And in Jedi, it was a little more intimate. It was more closed-in shots and things like that. There were not too many wide shots that I remember in that film. It was more of a closed-in endeavor. But there was a George Lucas branded visual stamp of approval that when you watch all the prequels, you're like, this is George Lucas Star Wars.
Definitely. Yeah. And in that totality of the prequels as well, the story makes sense. We know what it is. We know who the story is about.
Yeah.
The rise and fall, and we get it. and it works
Yeah.
at the end of the day.
Yeah,
Flawed, as we said, it's
very flawed,
but it works, and we know what it is. We know what's going on in this film. We know the totality of it. So in that way, it's it works really well. It's good. But,
because there is an idea of how the Republic fell, and why the Jedi got exterminated. That is all covered in all three of these films, and
it's covered even more in the Clone Wars animated series and other in the novels and things like that are even better, in my opinion, because the amount of details and stuff you find out about behind the scenes, really good. And
absolutely,
they wrote some good stuff there. So
yes, but when it comes to this film specifically, as a rating, you know what, man, I'm tempted to give this a 5 out of 10 because ultimately, of all the good things I've said, it's not that great, but calling it a 6 out of 10 for me is just like, that's a little too high. So if we're going to go into fractions, I'm going to give it a 5.5 out of 10. It's like... Yeah,
that's funny. That's kind of what I was thinking.
Yeah. It's got its good parts, it's got its bad parts.
Yeah, I'm thinking between a 5.5 and a 6. 6 just doesn't seem right to me. It doesn't sit well. Like, I can make an argument and say, you know what, Duel of Fates, John Williams, put all that in there. Okay, I'll just bump it up to a 6, even if it should be a 5.5. So it's kind of tough for me to say, but I think I'm going to agree with you, 5.5, or maybe between the 5.5 and a 6. Yeah,
yeah, it's really hard because you have to.
This one is actually tough for me to straight up say. I mean, you know what? I'll just say a 6. And but you take out John Williams, you take out Duel of the Fates, you take out a couple other elements, and the movie becomes a 3.
Take out all the good parts.
So keep that in mind.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, there's only a few good things about the film. Like, few good things like, oh, that's cool kind of things, or that's enjoyable, or that's touching. Very few of that, unfortunately. There's like a lot of stuff that's not supposed to be there, or it's just done incorrectly or done badly. So yeah, that is our review of Phantom Menace. So the next one we're going to be talking about is, of course, I think out of all the Star Wars films, at least in the George Lucas sphere, this is probably my least favorite one.
Yeah, it's not getting a 6 from me. Let me tell you that.
Probably not for me either. But you know what? Yeah, stay tuned, guys. We'll talk about all that and more.
Right, and may the Force be with you always.